Hey guys. I, 40M, have been married to my Christine, 39F, for about 10 years now, and we have one child, my lovely daughter who is 9 years old. Like any marriage, we've had ups and downs, a lot of downs to be honest, but we've come through everything fine. There's been no infidelity, but there has been a basis for trust issues, on both our parts I will admit. However, in the last 2 years or so, I've done my best as a husband and I think I've maintained a good record. My wife and I have a good life in the bedroom. We're getting older, but things haven't dropped off too significantly from back when we met. I've always been very thankful for that much because I have been involved with women who might as well have been celibate, and it was frustrating to say the least, because no amount of communication fixed anything. So, a woman who actually wants to roll around in bed is a blessing to me. I own a business before I met my wife, and when we got married, she eventually joined me at the helm to run things. About 2 weeks ago, I got into an accident on my way to work. I got T-boned at a red light and woke up in the hospital with a broken femur and humerus. Yeah, needless to say, that wasn't fun. Once it was certain there wasn't any internal damage, I was let home in 2 days, with a cast on my arm and my leg. Obviously, my movement was impaired quite a lot, but I was able to find my way around the house with a lot of stumbling and leaning on things. Of course, there were certain things I was unable to do and Christine had to help me with them. For about the first week, she seemed to be fine with it, and every time I asked her if I wasn't too much of a burden, she'd say no with a big smile. However, once it crossed over into the second week, I started to notice a bit of a change in her attitude. To be honest, when I said our life in the bedroom is good, it's really good, and we usually don't go a full week without anything going on, so my first assumption was that it might have been because of that, especially because I was starting to feel my body craving it too. Again, when I asked her if I was being a burden, she said no, but this time she seemed more short with me. I asked her straight up whether it was because of the lack of action between us, but she said it wasn't and left the room promptly after that. At that moment, I really felt it was, but I felt like being married as long as we were, she'd be able to answer me truthfully with a question like that. My mouth and one of my hands still work, so I feel like we'd be able to work things out. I mean, I had the urge to ask her to help me blow a load, but she's already doing a lot for me, so I decided not to bother, at least until I can't take it anymore. Now, here's the thing. Yesterday, she came back home after managing the business on my behalf that day, and she was very clearly in a much better mood than she was all the other days. I could describe her mood as bubbly. Now, I don't know if I'm being paranoid, but since I feel like her mood before was because we couldn't be intimate, I'm suddenly overthinking whether she was able to get somebody else to take care of that side of things for her. I mean, she's never cheated on me, does anyone ever know for sure? And apart from that sudden change in her mood, I wouldn't have anything else to use to suspect her. She could have had a massage or heard some good news, but talking to her, there didn't seem to be any obvious reason for her sudden happiness. So, before I do anything rash, not like I can with the way I am right now, I want to hear all of your opinions. Should I try and do some digging, or should I just assume that she was just happy for some other reason? I mean, I feel like I might be jumping to conclusions after such a long time knowing each other, but let me know what you all think, please. Update 1. Hey everyone, it's been about 3 weeks since my last post, but I'm back with an update. A lot of you said I should go ahead and check her phone. Partners should be allowed to check each other's phones if they have nothing to hide. I know she can check mine as much as she wants because I have never had anything to hide. Well, I eventually did check, and boy, did I find things. Anyway, I wasn't about to ask her to hand it over because that would give her the chance to delete any evidence. I had to gain access to it at a time when I would have enough time to search all through things and potentially save any proof I found. Just so you know, after that day when she was all happy, she slowly went back into a mood, and then another day, was all bubbly again. It was the third time that she came back all happy that I got my chance. She was chewing gum, but I was sure I could smell a slight scent of booze following her. She also didn't kiss me as she got back home, but she was happy. I think it might have been whatever she drank, but it didn't take long for her to fall asleep and she left her phone right beside her in bed. I've never checked Catherine's phone before, but I was very anxious as I did it because I was scared she could wake up at any moment and I'd have to start trying to explain myself, but the anxiety from not knowing whether she was cheating on me was honestly a lot worse, so I pushed through. There were no photos or videos of her with anyone unusual, but it was when I went to her messaging app that I saw an unread message from an Alex, and squinting at the profile picture, I saw it was the same Alex I knew. That worked for me. Thing is, this normally wouldn't have been an issue since she was manning the workplace at the moment, but the message was gotten home? With a kiss emoji at the end. I opened the message immediately, despite the last one being unread, and I went through everything up until the point where I had the accident. Things were very formal until about a day before the day that my wife had come home all bubbly the first time. He had started flirting with her heavily and she returned the energy. He must have gotten some kind of green light at work that day to come on so strong, and it just made it clear how little I knew while I was at home recovering. I noticed that on the 3 occasions that my wife had come back in a brighter mood, Alex always asked her if she had gotten home, but he never did that on other days. Between those days, there was some flirting here and there, but nothing extreme, though it might as well have been. I took several pictures with my phone and put her phone back. This was about 2 days ago, and I really don't know what to do. She didn't seem any different the next day, so I don't think she suspected I touched her phone, probably because she was tipsy. But I really don't know what to do. I have all the evidence I need to come to a very solid conclusion that my wife has cheated on me with my employee at least 3 times. But how do I proceed from here in a way that actually makes sense? Do I just say divorce and figure everything out from there? The thing is, I feel so hurt. We haven't had a super rosy marriage, but for the most part, it has been good. But cheating never seemed to be a fear of mine. But after I have an accident? That's when she decides to cheat on me? I have struggled to act normal around her, but I really don't know if I can take it any longer. I need this to end, but I can't let it just end with a divorce. I need more than that. I need to feel satisfied. Please, I've been trying to think of things I can do, but my mind is failing to put 2 thoughts together. I'll be waiting to hear what advice you all might have for me. Update 2. Wow, time flies. It's been a long time since my last update, but after posting it, I think I must have read through every single comment there. Thank you to everyone for all the kind words and suggestions, and I have to say, they certainly contributed to my approach. The first thing I did was to find a divorce lawyer. I didn't pay a retainer at that time, but just wanted to know what I could about his services. At that point, I stupidly still felt like there could be an explanation for what I had read on her phone, so I decided to confront her before making anything final. It was a bit easier for me to move around on my own, so I told her that I wanted to follow her to work to see how things were going and say hi to the employees. She tried to weakly convince me to just stay at home and that she had everything under control. But at that point, I knew nothing was going to stop me from going, so about an hour later, I was in the passenger seat and we were heading to our business location. Most of the guys were super happy to see me, Alex included, though he seemed a lot more awkward than the rest of them. My wife also didn't seem to be super happy that I was there. Towards the end of the workday, I called for Alex to come into my office, and I did that when my wife was somewhere close by. I noticed her freeze up as I did that, and she actually followed Alex into my office, which she normally wouldn't do if it was anyone else, but I didn't tell her to leave. Both of them seemed shifty, though I might have been imagining it. I only asked Alex something about a client we had been dealing with before the accident happened, and I could actually see the fear disappear from his body as he realized I was just asking about something relatively trivial. Once the day ended, I headed back home with my wife, and she was slightly talkative, maybe because she realized, or at least assumed, that she hadn't been found out. I felt like I had more than enough suspicion at that point to be very direct with her, and I decided that I would do it the next day when she returned from work. Perhaps fortunately for me, the next day was another one of those days where her mood seemed to be better than usual, which triggered me because it made me assume she had just been intimate with my employee just minutes before. She was probably made bolder because she felt she had confirmation that I didn't suspect it one bit. But that was part of what gave me the courage to confront her minutes after she walked in. I asked her to sit across from me, and I asked her straight up, "Are you cheating on me with Alex?" She froze, but it wasn't for long, and then she said yes. Right after that, she stood up and headed towards the kitchen. I told her to sit back down, and that I wasn't done, but she still went to the fridge to get a silly yogurt cup, and only then did she come back. Honestly, I could already tell that she didn't seem to be remorseful based on her behavior. Why? Why did you think that was a good idea? And then she went into explaining how she had needs as a woman and I wasn't providing those needs for her. I pointed out right there that I had been in a freaking accident, I still had casts on, and her major concern was that there was no sex. I told her that if she had told me how dear her needs were, we could have found a way to sort things out, at least until I was healed, but she only shook her head and said it wouldn't have been the same. Honestly, in that moment, I was actually lost for words. I was expecting crying and pleading and obvious guilt, but the stupid woman in front of me was trying to justify her cheating. I asked her directly whether she was sorry, and she told me no. She repeated again that she had needs and I couldn't provide them and that wasn't her fault, that she wouldn't deny herself pleasure because I had gotten yourself T-boned by an SUV. Yeah, I hate to admit it, but I lost all cool that I had at that moment. I struggled to my feet and walked over to her in an intimidating way. I didn't raise a fist or anything, but as I approached her, she stood up and shoved me hard. I lost balance and hit our wooden coffee table on the way down. I hit my shoulder, nothing was broken, I confirmed eventually, and I lay on the floor in pain. A few minutes later, I heard the front door close and her car start up and drive away. Yeah, my wife, definitely a soon-to-be ex, knocked me over and didn't even check if I was okay. I literally had 2 casts on. It was a few minutes before I could struggle up onto the couch and my shoulder was in a lot of pain. The first thing I did was call the police because I actually lost all respect and love for her in that moment. I was seeing red. Apparently, the noise of our argument had woken up my daughter and she was hiding near the top of the stairs when she saw me get pushed. She started crying when she saw me in pain and it broke my heart. She kept asking what had happened between me and her mom, but I really didn't know what to tell her. Eventually, the police came, took a report from me, and I was taken to the hospital, along with my daughter, for an x-ray, though fortunately, there was no lasting damage to my shoulder. I mean, considering I was on the way to recovery, I'd have been pissed if I broke something else. As soon as I got back home that night, I put my daughter to bed, and sent a message to the divorce lawyer, telling him that I was ready to go ahead with things. Christine hasn't come back home in the 3 days since that happened, and I haven't even contacted her. My daughter keeps asking where her mom is, but I had to make up a stupid excuse that she went to visit her sister. At this point, it's actually war, and I think I have everything I need to if things collapse for Christine. She wasn't sorry for cheating on me, but my goal is to make her sorry. Update 3, as I am writing this, which should be the final update in my story, I am doing so with a big smile on my face. I know it has been months since my last update, but if you're big fans of the sensation we call schadenfreude, you're going to like this one. I know I do. The first thing that I did was send text messages to every single one of my Christine's relatives that I knew, from her parents to a cousin that I had only met twice. I even sent it to the friends whose numbers I had, because I was pissed. I didn't write a single thing that wasn't true, and I even sent them the pictures I had taken of the flirting between her and Alex back then. Some of them responded, and some of them didn't. The ones who responded were more sympathetic, and I assumed most of those who didn't were on Christine's side. My job there was done. Whether they took her side or not, I made sure her sleazebag behavior was well documented. After that, I went into work, and I met Christine there. She was shocked to see me, probably thinking I was too crushed to do anything. It was barely 10 seconds before I pointed at her and Alex, the employee she had been cheating on me with, and told them they were both fired. She used to be my wife, but she was merely an employee. Her name was nowhere in the paperwork for the business, and I'm glad I had never brought her on to that extent. Alex was surprised by the suddenness of it all, but he couldn't argue because he knew he was guilty. He had worked for me for 3 years, and he was surely going to have a fun time trying to use me as a reference for whatever his next job was going to be. Meanwhile, Christine looked furious. She walked up to me. Honestly, I was scared I was going to get hit again, though that would have worked nicely for me, and when she was at arm's length, I sprung the divorce papers on her. Her face turned red because our employees were there, but I didn't care. She snatched the papers from me and marched out of the place. The rest of the day was awkward, and I had to deal with a lot of cursing and texts from her later, once she realized the full extent of people I had told about her cheating. Again, my story doesn't end there. It still gets good. Remember the assault? I had a police report and a hospital report, and I went to the police station at the close of business to report things. I told them I wanted to press charges. To skip through things a bit, my divorce lawyer was able to help me structure the case beautifully, as a complete bonus, and considering this came after I confronted her for cheating, she was unremorseful. I was injured, she left me there, and my daughter witnessed it. She got a week in jail and mandatory anger management classes. I hate that my little girl had to get a bit involved, but for me, it was worth it. The criminal record gladdened my heart. Then, we got to the actual divorce proceedings. These lasted a long time, especially because Christine was being extremely stubborn throughout the thing. But ultimately, it was a breeze, because there was way too much documented proof of bad behavior on my ex-wife's part. I mean, she had assaulted me, which she didn't deny, she had cheated on me, which she didn't deny, and she was very clearly unremorseful about either one of them. My daughter had to see her father assaulted, and again, that killed me. Now, I did mess up by firing her before I finalized the divorce, so I do have to pay a manageable amount of alimony, but only for 5 years. She's not a part of the business I built from the ground up. I have custody of my daughter because her mother's ability to control her temper and not bring strange men around my daughter is in question, and I get to keep the house because why uproot my little girl? I got to expose my wife's behavior to all her friends and give her a shiny criminal record. I honestly didn't set out to do all of this, but she made it work for me since she's just naturally a horrible person. I wish I had seen it earlier, but it is what it is. I'm just glad the story is over and my daughter is safe with me. Life goes on, and I'll try and rebuild eventually, but for now, I'm happy with the way things went, and I hope you all are too. Edit. By the way, Alex apparently had the balls to put my name down as a reference, and I made sure to professionally outline all his shortcomings as an employee, including the fact he may try to be inappropriate with the female partners of higher-ranking employees. It was fun to hear. Oh wow, thank you for letting us know that. From the person on the other end. I guess no evil goes unpaid. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Thought I married my soulmate, but I found Craigslist ad messages on her phone. Then I caught her cheating on me and told everyone. She left crying and never came back. Right before my wife and I got married, she had a crazy bachelorette party that might have involved things I didn't want to know about. I knew she had wild friends and that until she met me, she partied with them and had a couple run-ins with the police. As we dated and got to know each other, she told me that getting older was something she took seriously. She didn't want to continue her life on the path she was on. Instead, she wanted to settle down with a responsible man that made her feel loved and happy. I knew I could be that man for her, and I was ready to settle down too. I went out with my friends and had some good times, but it was never as reckless as my wife. I didn't see how drinking excessively, sleeping around, wasting money, or petty crime was going to lead me to a bright future. She looked at the credit card debt she'd racked up, saw the stark contrast to the lives we lived, and decided to change her ways. I saw her mature and make wiser choices as we spent time together, which made me believe this was the real deal. She was gorgeous, charming, genuine, and growing wiser thanks to me. I was under the impression that I'd met my soulmate and didn't need to be afraid to commit. My wife was ready to take vows with me and start our life together, so we got married in the summer of 2019. 3.5 years later, I was watching a show on my phone while she was in the bathroom. It was a normal Saturday for us. My wife was about to have a girls' night out with her friends, which was happening about 4 to 6 times a month. It was more than when we first got married. At first, she didn't allow these girls back into her life, but that's eventually what happened. They started guilt-tripping her, telling her she was going to be an old maid in her 30s. Even though she eventually gave in and started going out with them again, we had a deep bond that made me think she was a loyal, mature, respectable woman. I was completely wrong. We'd been talking about her debt, but she had trouble keeping a job. She was pretty materialistic, and found it much harder to earn money than to spend it. Since I was the only one with a steady job, I paid the bills and only allowed her a bit of money to pay towards her debt, get groceries, and go out with her friends. My phone died, so I plugged it in and grabbed my wife's phone to continue watching the show. As soon as I opened it, message notifications started pouring in from men on Craigslist. I read some of them and discovered they were replying to a recent post about her needing help to pay off her credit card debt. I continued reading through messages and realized she'd been seeing someone else regularly. He told her the last night they spent together was mind-blowing, and he needed to see her again tonight. I threw the phone across the room and just laid there, processing and thinking through what I just read. I felt like I became a void that might try anything to fill the emptiness. Before my wife came out of the bathroom, I realized I needed to save screenshots of those messages to prove she was at least talking to other men like this. Since I had much better credit, I bought our marital house completely on my own. Now that this was happening, I feared the worst possible scenario, which included her taking my home from me. After I took 2 screenshots, sent them to myself, and put her phone back where it was, she entered the room and asked if I was okay. I could tell she was nervous that might have seen her phone. I said I was fine. I had to catch her meeting another man, to get evidence and help my brain accept that this was real. If it was so much worse than her spending time drinking with her irresponsible friends. I arranged for my friend to pick me up and follow her that night. First, we followed her to a Starbucks, where she met an anxious-looking man that clearly didn't want anyone to know what they were up to. They got into his car without ordering anything and we followed them into a large neighborhood. To avoid being seen, we circled around until we saw them enter a house. The curtains weren't fully shut, so from across the street, we saw them enter the living room, start making out, and drop onto the couch. I got a little closer to take pictures as my heart pounded and my hands shook. Then I crouch-walked back to the car and my friend drove me home. During the ride, we discussed the disturbing reality of what was happening to me. My wife was cheating on me with multiple men, for money. He started spreading rumors through his phone to our friends, and through them it spread until it reached my wife's closest and dearest connections. They all bombarded her with degrading insults and slander, telling her she was cut off and they wouldn't support her terrible and degrading behavior. Even members of her family, like her twin cousins, expressed their disbelief and disappointment. She didn't even try to come home that night, or ever again. The embarrassment killed her. She messaged me at 2 a.m. with a heartfelt goodbye, in an attempt to get a response out of me or make me feel remorse, but it didn't work. I didn't reply at all, because she ultimately betrayed me. I never spoke to her again, not even in court. The last memory I have of her is when she broke down crying after receiving a lecture from the judge about honor and loyalty.